Hello and welcome to A News. My name is Tim Tongana. Let's have a look at the headlines. The US has launched what it calls heavy strikes on Iran, with forces targeting command centers, missile sites and military bases. The death toll from Japan's earthquake rises to 30. And the wildfires causing destruction in southern Europe spread to Turkey, Greece, leaving 3 firefighters dead. The US has launched what it calls heavy strikes on Iran, with forces targeting command centers, missile sites and military bases. Tens of thousands of US troops remain on high alert across the Middle East. It becomes as Washington threatens a harsh response to an attempted missile attack on its troops in the region.
More than 50,000 US troops across the Middle East remain on high alert, according to CENTCOM. The US military says it has carried out a major wave of strikes on dozens of Iranian military targets, including Iran's Revolutionary Guard command centers, missile and drone sites, and coastal defense facilities. It says it's in response to what it says were attempted Iranian missile attacks. Iran confirmed it had fired on US bases in Jordan. However, the missiles were intercepted, and President Donald Trump said the US would respond strongly.
They know it's coming. They're asking us not to do it, but they tried shooting it last night. So we had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour, and all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground. But they nevertheless took a shot, so it's our turn. And we'll see if we get there with an agreement at some point, but we're going to hit them very hard.
Meanwhile, Iranian state television released footage from Qeshm Island, showing rescue teams clearing rubble from a residential building after the strikes. Over at Egypt's Damietta port, a drone struck the US-owned gas storage tanker Energos Winter, causing a fire that spread to another vessel. Maritime security firms and trading sources said the blast was likely caused by a drone strike. No group has claimed responsibility. However, the IRGC had warned that countries supporting the United States would face a harsh response unless they changed their behaviour. It also said the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed as long as US threats and interference continue. In Iraq, Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi chaired an emergency National Security Council meeting after joint US-Saudi strikes targeted Iran-backed paramilitary groups. His office condemned the attacks and announced a new security plan to protect Iraq's sovereignty and prevent threats to neighbouring countries. Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces said at least 20 fighters were killed and 32 wounded. Washington and Riyadh said those strikes were retaliation for drone attacks on Saudi oil facilities launched from Iraq. Axios also reported that Trump met Saudi Defense Minister Prince Khalid bin Salman, who urged efforts to reduce tensions.
US President Donald Trump says he wants tariffs on Iran to be added to the sanctions bill against Russia currently being passed by lawmakers. He says the bill put forward by the late Senator Lindsey Graham would increase pressure on Tehran.
So I'd like them to add Iran as tariffs, not just as sanctions. I think it's important. That's what Lindsey wanted. Because I heard that they have tariffs on Russia, but not on those 5 countries with having to do with Iran. I'd like to see tariffs on Iran. It would make it much stronger. So perhaps you're very good at this. You can maybe tell them. I think they should put in for Russia, but I think they should put in for Iran. And that's really what Lindsey wanted. Yep.
The US has sanctioned a group of mainland Chinese and Hong Kong shipping companies over claims their vessels have been illegally transporting Iranian oil. 2 Iranian maritime insurance companies are also on the list, as Laura Bestbrook reports from Hong Kong.
8 tankers and their owning or managing companies were sanctioned for transporting Iranian crude and petroleum products linked to Iran's sanctions evading shadow fleet. The vessels are linked to companies registered in China, Hong Kong, and the Marshall Islands. Washington says the tankers have carried millions of barrels of Iranian oil, primarily to China, since 2022. Washington has sanctioned more than 100 ships linked to Iran's shadow fleet since the start of the year as it seeks to restrict Tehran's oil revenues. A U.S. State Department spokesman says the designations support a U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports. 2 Iranian companies were also sanctioned after being accused of forcing commercial vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz to purchase maritime insurance against risks, including seizures, that Washington says are created by Tehran itself. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the Iranian regime is, quote, desperate for cash. He accuses Iran of holding global commerce hostage and using international shipping to finance the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil. U.S. officials have accused Chinese buyers and shipping networks of providing Tehran with an economic lifeline by buying discounted crude despite American sanctions. Beijing has consistently opposed unilateral U.S. sanctions against its companies and defended its economic relations with Iran as legitimate. Laura Westbrook for A News in Hong Kong.
There are reports Iran is expected to receive a first shipment out of up to 400 Chinese-made air defense missile launches within weeks. The systems are said to counter low-flying aircraft and drones. Although China has denied the claims, I'm joined by a foreign analyst to discuss this story. Thank you so much for joining us on A News.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you on your show.
If Iran does indeed receive these Chinese-made air defense systems, how significantly could they change the military balance, particularly for U.S. and Israeli aircraft operating over or near Iranian territory?
Yeah, a very good question, and thank you so much again. Israel is not currently part of this stage of the war against the Iranian regime. It's only the U.S., which currently is involved. And we've seen also yesterday and today how Saudi Arabia has also engaged with Iranian militias out of Iraq to defend its territory after attacks on Saudi Arabia. We've seen also other countries in the Gulf take a part in some operations retaliatory against Iran and against their proxies, but for now it's the U.S. And why these mantas, these shoulder carried missiles are important. They give Iran, they fill a major gap for Iran where they couldn't really operate in defending against low-flying U.S. and Israeli aircraft in the initial phases of the war, and that's really helicopters, low-flying planes as well as drones, and so this might not sound like a lot. We are talking about a $60-70 million roughly contract for 400 of these manpads, but they could alter the game calculations and the war calculations, I should say, for the U.S. We know how an American aircraft, an F-15, was downed a few months ago over Iran, and that was done also likely with one of these Chinese-made launchers and missiles, all in one. So this could potentially also signal a lack of caution on behalf of Xi Jinping, the president of China, or rather a different calculation that he is ready to take. vis-a-vis the US, although President Trump was welcomed in Beijing in May, and Xi Jinping is expected in Washington D.C. In September. 24th, I believe, of September was the likely target date for a visit there. But again, this might really prompt President Trump to react in ways that Xi Jinping and his team are not possibly or necessarily prepared to handle the respective reaction. And by that, I mean sanctions. Sanctions have been already levied against Chinese firms, as you've presented. Also in May, we've seen Chinese satellite imagery companies being targeted with sanctions by the US State Department and affiliated agencies for providing targeting data against US troops, US bases in the Middle East region. And so all of this will be taken into the calculation by the US administration. We've seen how, President Trump, earlier on your show, we've seen how he's lobbied for senators to add to the Russia sanctions legislation also Iran sanctions. And that would mean not only Iranian companies per se, but also and government agencies, but also those that facilitate the continuation of the regime and its malign actions. So including companies from China and beyond. And, this game really by the Chinese government of using not the parent company headquartered out of Beijing, but part of the holding, a company headquartered out of Hong Kong, as if Hong Kong was an independent entity, as in the past. That's really farcical.
Two more questions.
That's,
all right, Mr.
yeah.
Schwarz. So China has denied supplying these weapons to parties involved in the conflict. If the deal indeed is confirmed, would it suggest that Beijing is moving from diplomatic support for Iran toward a more direct involvement?
I mean, again, their diplomacy has constantly denied supplying any sort of support to the Iranian regime, any sort of military support, I should say, because they are Iran's lifeline. They buy 90% or so of Iran's crude oil and condensates. But militarily, they have constantly denied supporting Iran. That's contrary to what all the data is suggesting. All of these shipments are tracked via satellite and via other means, including intelligence and human intelligence components. Everyone, in the U.S. intelligence organizations know very well, and the president is briefed daily on the type of support that China is providing. And the Chinese know very well that the U.S. knows about all of these, but they want to build, credible deniability. That's not working. They are currently a superpower, China, and it really depends on the U.S. actions to make President Xi Jinping recalculate whether this really is something that he's ready to continue doing to support the regime in Tehran, a regime which obviously is shaky also because of popular unrest in Iran, and China wants to continue being a partner to Iran, even if this regime falls as a result of popular pressure. So they need to be very careful as to the calculations going forward vis-a-vis the US, but also vis-a-vis Iran itself, the population that is.
Andrei Schwarz, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on A News.
Thank you.
Oil prices have jumped after the latest U.S. military strikes in the Middle East. It comes as new figures show that crude oil stocks in the U.S. are at their lowest in recent years.
Oil prices rose by more than 3% after joint US-Saudi strikes in Iraq and the interception of ballistic missiles aimed at US forces. Brent crude climbed nearly $3 a barrel, while US benchmark West Texas Intermediate also gained more than 3%. The rise follows the attacks by the US and Saudi Arabia on Iran-backed groups in Iraq, blaming them for drone attacks on Saudi oil facilities. However, Iran warned that blaming it for the drone attacks on Saudi oil facilities would be a major miscalculation. The strikes came hours after the US military said it had averted what it described as a surprise Iranian attack on US troops in the region. Analysts at ING said the latest developments had dampened expectations for a swift de-escalation in the Gulf. The focus is on the Strait of Hormuz, where shipping remains subdued, with just 5 commodity ships passing through the waterway on Tuesday. Diplomatic efforts have also suffered a setback. Reuters reports Tehran has rejected an Omani proposal backed by Gulf states for joint management of the strait, reducing the chances of an agreement. Prices were also supported by industry data showing US crude inventories fell by about 3.3 million barrels last week, ahead of official figures due later on Wednesday. Analysts at DBS Bank expect Brent to remain volatile, trading between $80 and $100 a barrel in the near term as the conflict ebbs and flows, while Reuters sources say OPEC Plus is likely to pause planned oil output increases for 3 months from October.
Moving on to Russia and Ukraine. Russian missile strikes across Ukraine have killed at least 8 people, including 1 in Kiev, 6 in 2 other Ukrainian regions. Kiev says rescue operations are continuing as both sides report strikes on military and infrastructure targets.
A fresh wave of Russian attacks has hit several Ukrainian cities, causing casualties and widespread damage. Kiev mayor said the capital was targeted with ballistic missiles, with fires reported in several districts. Emergency crews responded to damage caused by falling debris, while many residents sought shelter in underground metro stations opened as temporary shelters during the attack. A Russian strike hit a market and a garage site in Kiev, killing 1 person and injuring others, according to local officials. In the western city of Lviv, Russian strikes damaged residential buildings, trapping people under rubble. Mayor Andriy Sadovyi said more than 20 people were injured and rescue operations were underway. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, 6 people, including 2 children, were killed after a strike hit the city of Kryvyi Rih. Dozens more were injured and rescue teams continued searching damaged buildings. The strikes came after President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that Russia was preparing a major attack. He renewed calls for stronger air defenses, saying Ukraine urgently needs more protection against missile strikes. Moscow also said it struck 3 cargo ships in the Black Sea that it claimed were carrying military supplies. Ukraine reported overnight drone strikes on targets inside Russia, including oil refineries and logistics facilities. Russian officials said a Wildberries warehouse in Penza caught fire after a drone attack, injuring 1 person and forcing around 200 people to evacuate.
Poland's prime minister has confirmed that a suspected Russian missile fell in his country's territory overnight on Wednesday. The breach of NATO airspace comes a day after Poland and Ukraine held high-level security talks. Here is the latest on the story.
A 10-meter wide crater in an empty Polish farming field is the latest sign of the war in Ukraine spilling across borders. Speaking directly from the impact zone in the eastern Lublin province, Prime Minister Donald Tusk confirmed the airspace breach, stating that early assessments point to a Russian missile, though the exact type is still being verified. Tusk reassured the public that there was no immediate danger since the object landed in an uninhabited area, adding that Polish air defences were locked on and prepared to shoot it down if necessary. Ukraine's foreign minister had earlier claimed it was a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile fired during a massive overnight bombardment. The breach prompted Warsaw to immediately scramble fighter jets and activate its air defense networks. The timing of the incident is highly significant. Just a day earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in the same Polish province meeting with Tusk to discuss enhancing air defense cooperation.
All right, now Tehran and Moscow have been discussing Ukraine's drone attack on an Iranian commercial ship in the Caspian Sea at the weekend. A news correspondent Toraj reports.
Iran has signaled that it doesn't seek an escalation in the war in the region after Ukraine struck an Iranian merchant ship in Russia's territorial waters in the Caspian Sea at the weekend, killing one sailor. Diplomats from both Tehran and Moscow met in the Russian capital to discuss what happened, according to the state IRNA news agency. Iran's ambassador to Russia, Kazem Jalali, and Kremlin's special representative for the Caspian Sea affairs, Nikolai Udovichenko, also focused their talks on fostering bilateral relations, including in the Caspian Basin. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and his Ukrainian counterpart Andrei Sybiha held a phone call on Tuesday. Previously, Iran's foreign minister demanded restitution for losses amid unconfirmed media reports that Tehran was considering a reprisal response by targeting a Ukrainian port in the Black Sea. He had vowed to hold Kyiv accountable for the attack, promising in a post on X that the strike cannot remain unanswered. However, the plan was reportedly restrained after the phone call. Tehran has stressed that its commercial vessel was solely carrying non-military cargo. Speaking to IRNA, Ambassador Jalali added it was justified to expect that Russia will retaliate. Foreign Minister spokesman Ismail Baghai has slammed the attack as illegitimate and contrary to the United Nations Charter, rejecting Kiev's claim on linking Tehran to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
The Caspian Pipeline Consortium has suspended loading oil at its Black Sea terminal near Russia's Novorossiysk after it says Ukraine drone attacks targeted two tankers. The CPC says Marshall Islands flag tanker Nissos Sifnos was targeted while loading oil, causing a fire on the ship's deck. And the Isle of Man flag tanker Marathi was approaching the facility to receive crude. No casualties were reported. The consortium had already halted oil loading on the 20th of July following an earlier tanker attack. Operations resumed on the 27th. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has met U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in Washington. The meeting follows talks between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump at the White House. It comes amid increasing tensions over Israel's calls for stronger U.S. sanctions against Iran. Meanwhile, Pakistan has called for an immediate ceasefire in Israel's assault on Gaza following high-level talks with Egypt. Islamabad has urged the UN Security Council to fully implement the ceasefire and peace framework. Here's a report by A News.
Pakistan has followed its appeal at the United Nations for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza with fresh diplomatic engagement. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar held a telephone conversation with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelatty on Wednesday. According to Pakistan's Foreign Office, the two called for an immediate end to strikes in the Strip, unrestricted humanitarian assistance, and full respect for international law. They also condemned continued Israeli military operations, escalating sectoral violence, and repeated violations at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The ministers also discussed Jordan's proposal to convene Arab and Islamic countries to coordinate diplomatic efforts in support of the Palestinian people. The phone call came a day after Pakistan addressed the United Nations Security Council on Middle East. Pakistan's permanent representative, Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmed, urged full implementation of the Gaza ceasefire and the UN-backed peace framework. He warned that more than 1,100 Palestinians had been killed since the ceasefire took effect last October, and said delays risked undermining prospects for a just and lasting peace. Mariam Shah, A News, Islamabad.
After the break, 3 firefighters are killed in Greece as the wildfires devastating southern Europe continue to spread.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to A News. The death toll from the earthquake in southern Japan has risen to 30. Officials say the figure includes people whose deaths are being linked to the quake that struck Kumamoto on Tuesday.
Bridges have collapsed, roads have cracked, and a paper mill has been badly damaged after the earthquake in Japan's Kumamoto prefecture. Rescue teams are continuing to search for people trapped under the rubble. Officials say around 58,000 homes are still without water or electricity 2 days after the earthquake. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi says the death toll has risen to 30, including people whose deaths are still being investigated for a possible link to the earthquake. Most of the victims were killed at the Nippon Paper Industries paper mill and the Aeon shopping centre. 6 more people remain in critical condition. Authorities are investigating a possible gas explosion at the mall after rescuers reported smelling gas inside the building. Temperatures are expected to approach 40 degrees Celsius this weekend, so around 300 air conditioning units are being installed in evacuation centres. According to the Japan Meteorological Agency, the magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck on Tuesday at a depth of about 10 kilometres. Rescue workers, police and military personnel are continuing search and relief operations across the affected area. Japan is located on the seismically active Ring of Fire. About 1/5 of the world's major earthquakes occur in this region.
3 firefighters have been killed in Greece as wildfires continue to bring devastation to parts of southern Europe. Emergency services in France and Spain are continuing to battle blazes that have seen hundreds of thousands flee their homes.
3 firefighters have died while battling a wildfire on the Greek island of Crete as extreme heat and strong winds fuel blazes across southern Europe. The firefighters became trapped while travelling between fire fronts in the Rethymno region. The blaze spread rapidly, forcing residents of 3 nearby villages to evacuate. European emergency officials have warned that Greece and Italy could face a heightened wildfire risk in the coming weeks. In southwestern France, firefighters kept a major blaze west of Bordeaux stable overnight, but rising temperatures and stronger winds raised fears of further flare-ups. Around 220,000 people have been evacuated from the region, where fires have devastated 42,000 hectares of mainly pine forest. Some residents have returned to find their homes destroyed.
Like the region I've been born and raised into, basically go up into flames. And I mean, we've known for a long time that you have fires. It happens like almost every 2 years, something like that, but something that big.
In Spain, a major fire between Avila and Madrid has stabilized, allowing some evacuation and shelter orders to be lifted. But another blaze in Zamora forced 6 towns to evacuate, while around 1,000 people were told to remain indoors. In Castellón, a fire remained out of control after burning more than 10,000 hectares, leaving around 10,000 residents unable to return home. The fires have also destroyed forests and killed wildlife, as heat, drought, and strong winds continue to worsen conditions across the continent.
In Turkey, the main highway linking Fethiye to Antalya has been closed after wildfires broke out. Hundreds of residents and holidaymakers have been evacuated from some of the region's most popular resorts.
Firefighters are battling multiple wildfires across western and southern Turkey, with evacuations underway as strong winds push flames towards residential and tourist areas. The largest operation is in Muğla's Seydi Kemer district, where more than 600 people were evacuated from around 300 homes across 6 neighborhoods. Patients were transferred from the local hospital as a precaution, while no deaths were reported. In Antalya, 10 of 12 fires recorded over 2 days were extinguished. Operations continued in Kaş and Kumluca, where residents were evacuated as flames threatened nearby homes. 3 forestry workers suffered minor injuries. Around 650 people were also evacuated from 210 homes in Balıkesir's Edremit district as flames advanced towards Altınoluk. President Erdogan outlined the scale of the emergency after a cabinet meeting in Ankara on Wednesday.
Ülkemiz genelinde 59'u orman dışı olan alan.
Today, a total of 90 fires have broken out across our country so far, 59 of them in areas outside forests. 81 of these fires have been brought fully under control. Our efforts to contain the fires in Muğla, Balıkesir, Antalya and Çanakkale are continuing.
Çanakkale'deki yangınların kontrol altına alınmasına yönelik çalışmalarımız devam ediyor.
Erdogan said more than 3,200 personnel, supported by 21 aircraft, 58 helicopters and hundreds of ground vehicles, were working to contain the remaining fires. The Agriculture and Forestry Ministry said aerial and ground operations were continuing at the remaining active fronts, while some other fires had been contained or had lost intensity.
Meanwhile, Turkey's President Erdogan says his government is planning to advance the dissolution of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. The release of new legislation could mark the next stage in the ongoing peace initiative. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Speaking after a Wednesday cabinet meeting, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the government would submit legislation to parliament in coming days related to the sought-for dissolution of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. Erdogan did not provide details of the proposed legislation, but said it would support an ongoing disarmament process aimed at ending the group's decades-long armed campaign against the Turkish state.
When the obstacle of terrorism is removed, Turkey's economy will begin to write a new story in every field. We believe this with all our hearts. In the coming days, we will submit to the opinion of our veteran parliament the legal regulation that we have been working on for some time. As the People's Alliance, despite various difficulties, we will, God willing, bring this important process, which we have carried out in full solidarity, to its goal with the support of our political parties that place national issues above their personal interests.
Partilerimizin de desteğiyle inşallah hedefine ulaştıracağız.
The announcement comes more than a year after the PKK declared its intention to disarm and disband, following a public appeal by its jailed leader, Abdullah Öcalan. Viewed as a terrorist group by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union, the PKK has waged a bloody insurgency against the Turkish state since 1984. The conflict has claimed tens of thousands of lives, both military and civilian, and remains one of Turkey's most significant security challenges. After Öcalan issued his appeal in February of last year, the PKK took some tentative steps towards laying down their arms. Since then, however, the broader disarmament process has stalled, with key questions over implementation and verification still unresolved. Ankara insists that the PKK's complete and unconditional dissolution is essential for achieving peace and security, while Turkish officials have worked on a legal framework to manage the next phase of the process. Erdogan's latest comments suggest that the government is now preparing to formalize that framework through parliament, potentially paving the way for further progress towards ending the decades-long conflict. Additional details on the proposed legislation are expected once the bill is submitted to lawmakers. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
An estimated 1,500 migrants are believed to have swum from Morocco to Spain's Ceuta enclave in recent days, overwhelming local authorities. According to reports, reception centers in Ceuta are now at maximum capacity, with hundreds of migrants sleeping outside. Spain's Civil Guard, Maritime Rescue Services and the Red Cross say they've rescued dozens from the water. Meanwhile, Moroccan authorities have reportedly intercepted several more. Spanish officials have described the situation as extraordinary, saying it remains unclear what prompted the sudden rise in crossings. Russia has deported over 40,000 foreign nationals in the first half of the year, according to new figures. It comes amid tougher immigration laws and new powers for authorities to remove migrants who violate Russian regulations. Our correspondent reports.
More than 43,700 foreign nationals and stateless persons were deported from Russia to 59 countries between January and June this year. That's according to Russia's Federal Bailiff Service. The figure is 65.5% higher than during the same period last year, when around 26,400 people were expelled. The increase follows a series of measures aimed at tightening migration controls. Earlier this month, Russia's Upper House of Parliament approved legislation expanding the number of administrative offenses that can lead to deportation from 22 to 45. The list now includes public order violations, disobeying border officials, discrimination, and the online distribution of content deemed to undermine human dignity. The move followed the March 2024 Crocus City Hall terrorist attack, which was claimed by ISIS-K, the Afghanistan-based branch of the Islamic State. In the aftermath, authorities shortened the permitted period of stay for many foreign nationals, expanded police powers to order deportation in certain cases without a court ruling, and stepped up inspections at construction sites, markets, and other workplaces employing migrant labor. As a result, the Russian authorities issued 190,000 decisions on the administrative expulsion, deportation, and readmission of foreign nationals in 2024 alone. There have been no official statement from the governments of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, or Tajikistan in response to the latest deportation figures. However, all three have previously reacted to Russia's broader migration crackdown. Uzbekistan's migration agency said it was monitoring the situation, providing consular assistance where needed, and urged its citizens to comply with Russian migration laws. Tajikistan launched a diplomatic protest over the treatment of the citizens, while Kyrgyzstan advised its nationals to avoid non-essential travel to Russia. It's Steven Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
The United Nations Secretary General has given the UN support for a lasting peace settlement on a trip to Cyprus. During his visit, Antonio Guterres met with Cyprus President to discuss renewed efforts to advance negotiations. Guterres said the United Nations remains committed to supporting both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots in finding a solution, adding that peace must be built by the communities themselves. Now, for more on the story, I'm joined by Professor Yushel Bullitt. Thank you so much for joining us on A News.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Cyprus dispute has remained unresolved for decades. What do you think makes the United Nations believe this time around that this expanded 5+1 format could succeed where previous round of negotiations have failed?
When we consider the previous meetings, it was mostly either during the Cold War era, or it was just post a little bit later than that, and there was the new engagements in the Middle East or Mediterranean Sea. Now we have reached an era that the cooperation and finding a solution would be better for economically and politically for both the parties. But the parties, I mean, for all the world and the Eastern Mediterranean and Turkey, Greece, or any other relevant parts. Why they think this time will be good? I guess, to be honest, from my perspective, I do not expect it to be very much fruitful very fast. But it will be definitely, there will be some constructive works to be done. However, we know that Guterres, with his own goodwill, he wants to change something, and he has only 4 months left in the position, if I'm not wrong. He wants to maybe try his chance and show the world that the United Nations is still taking care of the issues that in the world going on. But let's say it's just a hopeful thought that we expect to turn into some constructive negotiations for future, rather than being directly a successful meeting, because it seems to be a very old matter to be solved very fast. So we need time on that.
So rebuilding trust between Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities is central to this initiative. What are the biggest political or even practical obstacles that could divide the two sides?
When it's come to the obstacles, I believe the very first one will be the equality issues on the sovereignty. In 1960, when the Cyprus Republic is established and there was relatively peace in the region, unfortunately, some Greek sides military coup happens and a new establishment collapsed. So at that time, the problem was nationalist feelings of the Greeks as well as the security issues that Turks has faced. So today, if they try to make a peace and they try to rebuild the peace and the friendship between them, or let's say trust between them, as they said, it will require some certain agreements for the security and the equality of the sides when it's come to the sovereignty of the issues of the both sides. So both the community, they share the same island. Actually, they even physically they look like each other, and culturally, foods, etc. Like the people are close to each other. It's not so bad. But when it's come to the political agendas, obviously there will be some disputes. But I believe in this case, Greek and Turkey, the both sides will take care of the as the guarantor countries. They will try to save their previous gains, or they will try to safeguard their future benefits from the work. So the both sides, especially for Turkey, I can say that the one of the most important issue will be the benefit of the Cypriots Turks and their representation and the safety alongside the Mediterranean seas, the natural resources sharing, etc. So it has much deeper layers of work to be done.
I'm glad you mentioned the participation of Greece and Turkey. So with these two nations, including the United Kingdom participating, how much influence could these external actors have over the outcome? And could their competing interests somehow complicate the negotiations?
Actually, it's of course when it's come to the political agendas of the sides, Turkey and Greeks, we cannot actually anticipate anything for now because it will be like fortune seeing. You know, it's not possible to say that it will positively or negatively affect. But what we know in the region, Turkey needs peace. Greece needs peace for their economic development and to solve the issues and prepare for the future of the both countries. I believe the cooperation could create an amazing opportunity for the countries economically, tourism-wise, or let's say politically. However, when you look at from the Greece perspective and their expectation from Turkey for the Mediterranean Sea, natural gas resources, etc., it might cause the Greek side's expectations might cause some trouble. On the other hand, Turkey will not be really happy if Cyprus keep pressuring Turkey through Greece and from the back doors with the cooperation with the Israel, etc. They have worked together. It might disturb Turkey, but I guess Turkey will be cooperative, and it has been actually cooperative since very long time. Come to peace negotiations. When the Annan plan is done, it was the Greek side who rejected the agreements. So we can say that I do expect Turkey to be very close to make negotiations, be very positive with the idea. However, if Greece and the supporters of them and the Cyprus side do not want to give any space to the Turkish Cypriots, obviously Turkey also will not make concessions in this case.
Professor Yücel Bulut, thank you so much for your analysis here on A News. We really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Coming up after the break, we are in Astana for the start of the Games of the Future 2-week event. Stay tuned. Kazakhstan is hosting one of the world's newest international sporting events. The Games of the Future have opened in Astana, where athletes compete in a format that combines digital gaming with physical sport. More than 800 competitors from over 30 countries are taking part. Our correspondent Fariza Karizmuna reports.
The Games of the Future are underway in Astana, where more than 800 athletes from 34 countries are competing in 8 physical disciplines. The tournament combines digital technology with traditional sport. Kazakhstan is hosting the event for the first time, becoming the third country to stage the Games after Russia in 2024 in Abu Dhabi last year. The opening ceremony was attended by Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev and the leaders of the Central Asian states. In his address, Tokayev described the Games as a unique event combining sport and intellect. He also said hosting a tournament of this scale would contribute to Kazakhstan's infrastructure and strengthen the country's international profile.
Therefore, amid growing global challenges, unique initiatives such as the Games of the Future are getting much deeper significance. I am confident that the Games of the Future will become another golden bridge of unity, friendship, and solidarity between all nations.
Athletes compete first in a video game before taking part in the physical version of the same discipline. The winner is decided by the combined result, so success in the digital stage alone is not enough to secure an overall victory. According to the head of the World Digital Community, the movement now includes 115 countries. National tournaments and qualifying events are held across its member countries, with the top athletes earning a place at the Games of the Future. The competition runs until August 9th. The total prize fund is nearly $5 million, with around 1,000 volunteers supporting the event. Farisa Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
And now to football. Ahead of Kabarak FK's match against CSKA Sofia on Thursday, Kabarak FK manager Guban Gubanov has been speaking about the team's squad changes, new signing expectations, and the match. A News' Katie Wilson met up with him.
Guban Melim, Camilo Duran and Leandro Andrade, who were the team's top goal scorers in last season's Champions League campaign, they left during the summer transfer window. After that goalless draw last week, how confident are you that the current squad has got that attacking quality to replace their goal-scoring output? And what do you need to see from your forwards tomorrow?
Yes, we transferred two very good players to another team. They had fully adapted to the squad and were helping us improve our game. This was very important, and both of them were also very confident players. However, I am not thinking today about what we could have done if they were still in the team. On the contrary, I wish both of them success. They were both among our favourite players. As for our own attacking line, I think every player is trying to show his best qualities. We have new players who are very hard-working. I personally invited each of them to the team because I trust and believe in them. They are players with a slightly different style, but they also have their own interesting movements and qualities. I believe they will make us feel the absence of those players much less. They are very motivated and will try to do their best to achieve a result, even though the first match ended in a draw. They are players who are capable of fighting until the very end.
And that's the news this hour. Thank you for joining us. See you next time, and stay tuned to A News for more updates.